why do we resist the very things we say we want is because we're so caught up in what we want, and instead of just being. And so, like, it doesn't matter what your want list is. Like, if you sit down and go, okay, well, what I would really like is, I'd like to drive a Range Rover, and I'd like to live in a 5-bedroom house, and I'd like to live near the sea, and I'd like to earn $1 million a year, and the danger of that is then it's like, okay, to your point, like, oh, happiness then lives on the other side of that. So if I can just get there.
Well, only if you put it on the other side of it.
Yeah, sure, but I think we do that as human beings. We do that habitually, and I used to do it, and in many ways I sometimes still do it, like when I'm. But the truth is that when we said our attachment to those things, i.e., the things we think we want, and we just exist and delight in existing and going forward. And it doesn't mean we're not ambitious. Like, don't for a second think I I'm saying, oh well, you can't get the title or the job or the cash or the car or the house. But if you don't make your happiness contingent on achieving those things, um, and you're able to just operate from a place of either it happens or it doesn't. I don't really care, but I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna have fun and I'm gonna try because that's how I want to spend my dash. Like, it all comes down to the dash for me. Like the dash between the day we're born and the day we die. How do you want to spend your dash? And I don't want to spend my dash idling away the hours contemplating my navel. I want to be doing shit. And I want to be involved in stuff, and I want to be connecting with people, and I want to be helping people, and I want to be in service of something. I am happy because of what I do, not because of what I want.
Or like I'm going to challenge that. You're happy because you're being happy. Like even when we turn it into you're happy because of what do you mean by I'm happy because of what I do?
Or maybe I should say I'm happy because of the way I do things.
What do you mean by that?
The way that I choose to show up most of the time for myself is present, unattached, but fully engaged in whatever I'm choosing to be engaged in.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm challenging that is, well, I'm not challenging what you just said now, is because I am picking on words, but only because I think it's important in the context of how we end up falling into the trap. I think we turn things like happiness and freedom and presence into a doing. So what do I have to do to be happy? And that's another want then it becomes a want. It's like, okay, so what's the job that I want to have to do? Like what do I need to be doing to be happy? And what I heard and what you said, which I think is true, is no, like you can be happy or happiness and freedom and contentment and presence have nothing to do with doing anything or wanting anything. Like they just don't. It looks like they do because you can experience great joy, and like I know that you do. Like you experience great joy. Let's say when you're with people, and like I know that the teams you work with, like I can see it. Like you're just totally there, and you're experiencing pure joy because you're just like you're there, and it's coming out of you. But if someone said to me, "Oh, is that what Billows needs? Does he need to be with teams?" I'd be like, "No, I've seen Billows experience joy stood on his own, like in a field. I've seen him experience. I've seen the same thing in so many places. I've also seen Billows experience all sorts of other emotions, both when he's with teams, because I worked with you for a long time, and we still haven't fully gone into Mr. Potato Head. That's another story for another day, but we will. And when you hear about Mr. Potato Head, you'll be like, oh, what happened to Mr. Potato Head? Because he doesn't sound like he shows up very much anymore. It's like, no, he doesn't. But he used to in the same context, but now he doesn't. So it's like when we talk about the way we would love to be, it's knowing that is separate to then anything that we might want to do or want to create. And I think you used a word which is really important. You said it's the habitual pattern of a lot of human beings. And I think that's true, but habits are there to be broken and remade. And so
Mm,
I think that habit is to say, I want this and I want that because that will make me happy. And so
mm,
the habit is to perpetually look outside of ourselves for the things we need to either have or the things we need to do. And if we could just get the formula of having and doing just right, then we'd experience more of the feelings we want to experience all the time. And that
mm,
is, me, is the number one habit that keeps us perpetually searching and forever away from what we really want. Because actually, if we, and I do this I do this for myself, and I do this with clients all the time. We just go into it like, let's just write down the story of what you would love. And like, we'll normally push out about 5 years. And I say, just start it off with something like, oh, I'm sat in my favorite chair, drinking my favorite drink. The sun is going down and everything is exactly how I want it. And I ask them to describe that world in like as much detail as they can. What does your life look like? Who are you spending your time with? What do you do? Where do you live? What does your best day look like? What does it sound like? What do you hear? And it's amazing. Like, people will come out with these incredible visions. And then we're like, if that was true, like, what would be, like, and we talk about feelings. So, okay, like, be, happy and content and blah, blah, blah. And then once we have that, we go, okay, now let's break this down and look at all the things which are external to you and all the things that are internal. So we'll have, house, job, other people, like, we'll have everything that's outside, like, we'll literally draw them out. And then we'll have all the things on the inside, all the feelings that people would experience. And what we want to do is want to look at it and say, if you could have everything on the left-hand side, so the left-hand side being internal, if you could have all of that without needing to have anything on the right-hand side, what would still remain on the right-hand side? And what we're wanting to do is to figure out, like, where have they inadvertently and innocently made connections between something on the outside and something on the inside. And we want to break that apart to be able to go, if you could have this, if you could have freedom, would you still want, and I'm making it up, would you still want like £1,000,000? And it's like, well, maybe not actually, because like, I've put freedom. Okay, well, like, let's look at freedom. And you can have freedom. Like, if you were free, what would you do? And normally, like, in their days, they said, oh, if I was free, I would do this and I would do that, and I'd spend more time, let's say, with my friends, and and it's like, okay, well, let's look at that, because you are free. Like, just be free and see what would happen. And again, then it's challenging for people, because it's like, oh, okay. And one of my favorite stories about this, and I won't say who it was, but on one of their side, they had a John Deere drive-on lawnmower. And and I was like, wow. And we were like, well, if you had that, what would you have? And this person said, I'd have peace. And I was like, wow, okay, tell me about it. It's like, I just see myself sat on my John Deere ride-on lawnmower, mowing my grass, listening to music, and just being at peace, like just being so at peace. I was like, fuck, that's a beautiful image. And then we had a conversation about what, like, can you have, like, what if you could have that peace, like, right now? What if you didn't need the John Deere lawnmower? And we got into it, and he was like, actually, I think, and he was straight away went, oh, I could. I actually can. I do. But sometimes I don't allow myself to have peace because I think that I have to be. And was like, well, what if you allowed yourself to have peace? And he was like, no, I could. And then we went back and said, would you still want the John Deere lawnmower? And he was like, fucking hell yeah. I still want a John Deere lawnmower. I was like, why do you want a John Deere lawnmower now? He's like, because it'd just be cool. He said, I've just always wanted a John Deere lawnmower. I was like, brilliant. How good to know. You can still have a John Deere lawnmower for no other reason than you want a John Deere lawnmower. And who says that and you can have that. But now it doesn't matter if you don't get it because your piece isn't riding on it. And that's where I think the biggest opportunity for us is to get so clean and clear on what we're actually saying. And most of us don't spend the time, Bill, to draw it out of ourselves, because what we do is we say no so quickly that we never allow the cork to come out of the bottle. It's like corking a great bottle of red wine. You got to let it breathe first. And then you get to pour it into the glass, and then you get to taste it. And I think what we're talking about here is very similar. You know, before we allow our like little squirrely thoughts to get in, we just have to give ourselves permission to go, well, let me just see what's here. And then let me look at, like, where am I creating some rules around what I want that may not be in service? And then it can be like, what's left? Like, if I could be happy, be more at peace, and be more happy, be more at peace. If I didn't have a problem with being bored sometimes, like if we looked at, and that was all just on offer today, which I think it is, what would be left? And I think what's left is still important, because one of the things that I see in human beings is that we are inherently creative. We are called to create. And we're amazing at it. Like, I'm looking at books, the fact that you and I are on this amazing platform that allows us to do these podcasts so seamlessly. You're in Cape Town, I'm in Manchester. Just the things that we create out of nothing is amazing to me. And I think the most creative people in the world are often the ones that just allow that to flow through them without it necessarily being, muddying the waters with thinking that somehow their well-being lies in it. So anyway, that's just, I wanted to draw that out because I think there's just a both end here. And I know for me, when I first started on this journey, one of the things that used to get my goat was people saying to me, well, you don't need any of that now. Like, I'd be like, oh, I still want to create something. Like, you don't have to do that. And it was almost, and I'm not saying you did this, by the way, but the way I experienced it was people almost dismissed it. No, we're like, you don't have to worry about that anymore because you can just be happy. And the bit that I found hard, and that was like, I don't want to worry about it. I'm still drawn to do stuff. And I think that is where ultimately our grounding in what you're talking about in the being comes from, playing the both sides of the fence, because we go and we play and then we get caught up and then we see the illusion again and then we deepen our grounding. And so there's this beautiful interplay that's happening that if you're aware of how it works, then getting snared up in that old habitual pattern in many ways is the gift, because when you see it again, you drop deeper and the old pattern loses its grip. And if you're never prepared to play in that arena, then your grounding doesn't really get any deeper, because you kind of comes back to one of the things that I think is gonna been released. Then I think we fall into this trap of spiritual bypassing. We're like, oh no, I don't need to test myself as a public speaker because I've got everything I need. And it's like, no, you don't have to do that, but You keep talking about it. So my hunch is that you actually do want to, but you're scared. So if what you say on the left is true, then you don't have to be scared. So let's go. Let's go. Let's get into the game of life you actually are drawn to play. Not because it's going to make you happy, but because it's drawn to play. And then you'll be in the myriad of everything that brings. The mud and the lotus will exist in that, and that is what's going to deepen your grounding and open you up to more goodness.
Playing around with that is fun because you it doesn't you don't need anything to do it. You don't need anything to get home. You just are home. You just need to get out of your head, and that is as easy as it is and as hard as it is, all in one bowl.
So
But
for the listener, I think one of the keys is you can hold your desires lightly. You can fall in love with an idea and have it now, and then be prepared to go like, oh, yeah, like that sounds amazing. I don't know when, I don't know how, and I'm totally open to both the possibility of it showing itself to me or not. And I think that acceptance is key. Coming around to our question, why do we argue for all the reasons why we can't have what we want? I think we've captured the reason we argue for why we can't have what we want is because we're scared, because we've loaded it with, our happiness and well-being has somehow been buried into it, and therefore it looks too risky. But if we can separate those things out, then we don't have to argue for the reasons why we can't have them. But equally, we can be much lighter with speaking from a place of, yeah, I would love this, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm totally open to following my nose, whatever that means, and seeing where it leads. And then that becomes often quite an enjoyable experience. Then you're just following your passion, and sometimes that'll mean showing up with a bit of grit, and sometimes actually it'll just flow beautifully. But perhaps that's the opportunity.